Dio aweti, Shukapesh Wendake no Hindi. Bonjour tout le monde, mon nom est Samuel, je suis de Wendake, je viens avec mes amis et ma famille pour vous présenter nos chants et danses traditionnels d'ici, de Wendake. On va commencer avec le chant des femmes. On appelle ça les pas qui frottent. Donc, ça représente Scientifique, au début des temps, qui a étalé la terre sur la grande tortue. Donc le prochain chant, c'est le chant des hommes qu'on appelle le chant de la guerre pour honorer Inon, l'enfant tonnerre. Pour la prochaine, les prochaines, ça va être tout le monde ensemble, femmes comme hommes. Donc, ce type de danse-là, on appelle ça la danse de la fumée, des smoke dance. Pourquoi qu'on appelle ça ainsi? C'est autrefois, selon la légende, alors qu'on vivait dans les maisons longues, il y avait plusieurs familles qui vivaient dans ces maisons-là. Donc, il y avait plusieurs feux par famille. Donc, beaucoup d'accumulation de fumée dans les maisons longues. Donc, on demandait aux jeunes de danser rapidement en tournant pour évacuer la fumée. Donc, comme son nom l'indique, la danse de la fumée, des smoke dance. Yo, everyone, thank you so much. J'espère que vous allez passer une belle après-midi. On vous remercie de nous avoir invités. Bienvenue au Niawantio, terre des Wendat.
I would like to warmly thank Samuel Shukapesh Savard, water drum player and singer, and the dancer, Laurence, Adrienne, Marilou, and Michael. Through the rhythm of the drum, the songs, and the movement, you made the Wendat culture resonate deeply among us. I now have the honor to introducing Pierre Picard, Grand Chief of the Wendat Nation. Shaped by his studies in politics and psychology, he has dedicated his career to improving the well-being of First Nations through social work and by supporting organizations seeking to strengthen their governance. He received the First Nation People Medal in recognition of his significant contributions on behalf of First Nation in Quebec. In his current leadership role, he places great importance on promoting Wendat identity, fostering communication, and respecting allies who are working to build healthy relationships with the Wendat Nation. Please join me in warmly welcoming Grand Chef Pierre Picard.
Oui, bonjour, good afternoon. I'm Pierre Picard. I'm the Grand Chief of the Wendat Nation. Merci beaucoup aux danseurs de la nation Wendat. Pierre Picard Yatsi, Wendat Endi, Yandiawich, Ivoiri Yukukte, Askenonia Yesquez. I hope you are at peace today. That is how our ancestors used to ask one another how they were. Yehe, bienvenue, welcome. On behalf of the Wendat Nation and the Wendat Chiefs, I am very pleased and honored to welcome you to our beautiful territory, Onyawansio. I wish to begin by highlighting that while Wendats are present throughout this province and across the country, we remain the only nation with a permanent presence in the greater Quebec City region. For centuries, this territory has been a place of encounter, dialogue, and exchange. It is therefore meaningful that you are here today to reflect on questions of truth, trust, and communication. We live in a time when information is everywhere, yet trust is fragile. Across our societies, confidence in institutions, in the media, and even in science has been shaken. When emotions, beliefs, or fear take the place of dialogue, misunderstandings grow and divisions deepen. This affects everyone, including people who make decisions about the environment. For the Wendat Nation, trust is not built through words alone, but through relationships, listening, and respect. Clear and honest communication, even when issues are complex or difficult, is essential. When people feel excluded or unheard, doubt takes root. When they are meaningfully involved, understanding grows. This is why the themes of this conference resonate too strongly with us. Environmental assessment relies on rigorous science, but it also relies on people, on communities, on nations, and on the ability to explain, to listen, and to engage with respect. Finding better ways to share knowledge, to include diverse voices, and to address concerns openly is not optional. It is necessary. I wish to offer a tiawang, thank you, merci, to the Wendat people and to all those attending this conference and contributing through your knowledge and experience. Tiawang, thank you, merci, as well to those who are performing this afternoon, sharing Wendat culture and reminding us that knowledge is also carried through song, movement, and living traditions. I also wish to thank Onyiwamanda sector from our administration for their dedication and involvement in organizing this plenary session. As you continue this conference, I invite you to approach these conversations with openness and humility. Take the time to listen, take the time to question, and to consider perspectives different from your own. In doing so, you contribute not only to better assessments, but to stronger relationships and more lasting decisions. Tiawang, thank you, merci. I hope you have a good stay here on our traditional land, and I wish you success with this event. Thank you very much.
Bonjour, welcome. Distinguished guests, dear colleagues, friends, and partners from around the world. I am Annie Prince, Chair of the Board of IAIA and co-chair of this event. It's with great pride that we welcome you here in Quebec City, a place shaped by history, memory, and meaning, one that invites us not only to think, but also to feel, to listen, and to reflect together. We gather today on the traditional territory of the Wendat Nation. We learn to understand the rhythms of the changing season and to respect the delicate balance between humans and the living world. It reminds us that land is not something we own, but something we belong to. It is not a commodity to be exploited, but a relationship to nurture, one that holds memory, identity, and future. Quebec is also a place of cultural encounter, as the birthplace of French-speaking culture in Americas. The city has been shaped by language, exchange, and the determination to sustain a distinct identity within a diverse continent. Through this conference, we invite you to discover these two living cultures, to be moved by their stories, knowledge, and values. They offer us essential perspective for rethinking our relationship with land, development, and one another. The team, Misinformation, Disinformation, and Communication and Impact Assessment, speak powerfully to the world we live in today. We are navigating an era of uncertainty where facts are questioned and science is challenged. Simplified narrative, false information, and polarized discourse are shaping public debate and collective decision. This theme is both a call for reflection and a call for action. It speaks to all of us who believe that truth matters, that community deserves to be heard, and that decisions affecting people and ecosystem must be made openly, transparently, and based on science and meaningful public involvement. In this complex political and social context, our role is more critical than ever. We carry a responsibility to uphold rigorous, transparent, and evidence-based science, while also acknowledging the limits of our knowledge and the importance of listening to the others. At IAIA26, we come together to share technical knowledge, but also to reaffirm our collective commitment to clarity, integrity, and inclusion. Impact assessment relies on data, yes, but it also relies on dialogue, listening, and trust. When misinformation and disinformation spread, they can erode public confidence, distort decisions, and marginalize the voice that most need to be heard. Communication is an act of respect, respect for cultural differences, respect for communities, and respect for nature and its limit. It requires openness and courage. Today, planning and assessing projects is about far more than measuring impacts. It's about making societal choices. It's about recognizing that every project takes place on inhabited land with living cultures and fragile ecosystems. Whether you are a longtime practitioner or new to the field, IAIA26 is an invitation to be part of something meaningful. May this conference be a space for genuine dialogue, critical reflection, and collective learning. A place where science meets listening, where data meets value, and where diverse perspectives become a source of strength rather than division. Dear colleague, let us speak truth, let us build trust, and let us shape the future together. Welcome to the territory of the Wendat Nation. Welcome to Quebec City, and welcome to IAIA.
So we are very excited to welcome you all at the biggest IAIA conference in history. So we are about 1,500 participants. So congratulations, that's very good. We broke all records, the most attendees, the most sessions, the most lectures. training sessions and technical visits, and the greatest sponsorship support. So it will be records hard to beat for the next one. So beyond our reflection on disinformation and communication and impact studies, we must take advantage of this great opportunity to exchange with each other and share recent innovation and impact studies. Environmental and social concerns in general, and the practice of environmental assessments in particular, are currently facing significant headwinds. So government authorities in several countries and jurisdictions are proposing to bypass the usual environmental assessment and approval procedures for certain projects and redefine the types of projects that must undergo a full environmental and social assessment. So we all know that it is false to claim that considering the environment and citizens' concerns are expensive and delay the implementation of projects, and that is only an administrative process for authorization. This reflects the profound lack of knowledge of the relevance and contribution of the environmental and social assessment of projects to an informed decision. When the environment and social issues are integrated as early as possible in the planning and design of a project, it is a better project that generally costs less and is carried out more quickly with less impact and contestation. So the same applies to policies, plans, and programs. So we have been carrying out impact studies for more than 50 years, and we have an immense wealth of experience and expertise on which we can rely on. Several innovations have been made to be more efficient. However, this remains poorly known to decision makers, the media, and the public. So we must work to promote our discipline as the best decision-making tool. We must promote the link between science and politics in these difficult times when environmental and social challenges are numerous. So I wish you an excellent conference, several stimulating meetings, and new partnerships. We wish you also to discover the vibrant Quebec culture in the cradle of this one beautiful Quebec city. So bon séjour à IAIA26 et à Québec. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to introduce Alain Kørnøv, the current president of IAIA. She is professor of environmental assessment and head of the Danish Center for Environmental Assessment at Aalborg University. She holds a PhD in strategic environmental assessment and has more than 25 years of experience bridging research and practice in environmental assessment, sustainability, governance, and digitalization. Lone is a member of the Danish Academy of Technical Sciences and recipient of the Royal Order of Chivalry of Denbrough. Please join me in welcoming Professor Alain Kørnøv.
What a beautiful room to view from here. Dear colleagues and friends, welcome to IAIA26. As we gather here in Quebec City, I would like to acknowledge and thank the Wendat Nation for welcoming us on your traditional territory. It's meaningful that we gather in a context where stewardship and responsibility towards past, current, and future generations remain so central, because these are also values at the heart of impact assessment. Before anything else, I would also like to express my sincere gratitude to the IAIA headquarter team, to our CEO and the board, to our members, and all the newcomers that I had the pleasure of engaging with just before lunch, to our collaborators, partners, and sponsors around the world, and especially to Jean and Annie and the organizing committee here in Quebec, whose efforts has created the conditions for the important conversation we will have over the coming days. So please join me in thanking all of them. During my time as president, I have spent time in many different contexts, public meetings, exchanges with authorities and industry, collaborations with researchers, and training practitioners and students. And across these different contexts, one thing has increasingly stayed with me: how deeply trust underpins our societies, communities, and professional collaboration. The Danish philosopher Løgstrup in Danish, once wrote that truth is part of the very fabric of human life. The very fabric of human life. We normally begin by trusting each other, even complete strangers. Only under particular circumstances does mistrust take hold, because trust is usually invisible to us when it functions well. We enter conversation expecting honesty before we expect manipulation, and we rely on institutions and expertise before we assume, at least initially, good faith. But when trust is repeatedly weakened, democratic dialogue itself becomes very fragile. Across many of the conversations I've had in recent years, I increasingly encountered the same underlying concern, that this fabric of trust has become more fragile. The Italian author Giuliano da Empoli, to my best ability in Italian, describes in his book, The Hour of the Predator, a world where influence increasingly belongs not to those with the strongest evidence, but to those who are fastest at shaping emotions, controlling narratives, and exploiting uncertainty. That is an uncomfortable observation for all of us and for the community like ours, because impact assessment was built on a fundamentally optimistic assumption that better knowledge leads to better decisions, but perhaps also on something deeper, that people are still willing to listen, deliberate, and engage with one another in good faith. Today, however, evidence increasingly competes not only with other evidence, but with outrage, algorithms, and deliberate disinformation. During my presidency, I have seen how uncertainty can be weaponized, how complex assessments are reduced to emotionally charged fragments, and public debate detached from the substance of assessments. And all of this is happening at the very moment when artificial intelligence is beginning to reshape how societies produce, distribute, and trust knowledge. And perhaps the deeper concern is this: when thinking about the future of AI, it seems unavoidable that it will not only amplify human intelligence, but also human stupidity. Technology can deepen understanding, but it can also accelerate oversimplification, polarization, and manipulation. Yet I do not believe the answer is fear. I believe the challenge is responsibility. AI can help us analyze complexity more effectively, can broaden participation, and improve our ability to understand interconnected impacts. An important question is how we shape these technologies in ways that strengthen transparency, trust, and informed decision-making. And this is exactly where impact assessment matters. At its core, impact assessment is about protecting the condition for informed and democratic deliberation under uncertainty and complexity. We are therefore not only technical experts, we are also interpreters of complexity and bridge builders between expertise and communities. That's why this year's conference theme is so timely and important. Over the coming days, I encourage you to fully engage in the conversations ahead, challenge assumptions, listen across perspectives, and reflect not only on the methods and tools of impact assessment, but also on the role of our fields must play in the world where trust, truth, and knowledge can no longer be taken for granted. As I conclude my time as president, I do that with great gratitude. serving this community has been one of the great privileges of my professional life, and personally, I'm deeply grateful for the friendships and support that have grown through this role. I would also like to thank the outgoing board members for their commitment and service, and to wish the incoming president and new board members all the very best in the year ahead. And despite the challenges we face, I leave with hope, because communities like this still exist. Communities willing to listen, deliberate, and collaborate across differences. This gives me confidence for the future, because there remains a deep global need for precisely what this community represents: credible knowledge, meaningful participation, and long-term responsibility towards people and the planet. And perhaps over the coming days, I would encourage all of us to reach out to someone we do not already know, to begin new conversations across disciplines and generations, because trust and good impact assessment often begins precisely there. Thank you, and welcome to IAIA26.
It's an honor to introduce Gary Baker, Chief Executive Officer of the IAIA. Appointed in 2023, he brings a global career spanning investment research, leadership, and professional standards across Asia, United States, and Europe. He previously served as Global Head of Research, Advocacy, and Professional Standard at CFA Institute. Gary holds a Master from University of Cambridge, and he is a CFA chart holder. Please join me in welcoming Gary Baker.
Good afternoon, everyone. Wow, it's amazing. I can't even see the back of the room here. Welcome. Let me add my welcome and thanks to organizers, to Quebec City. What I've seen so far, it's a fantastic location for a conference of this nature. A large part of my job is spent talking to people outside of this community, looking at impact assessment from a different perspective as to what we offer, what we do, how we're perceived. And I do want to spend a few minutes just talking about that, as to the changing role of impact assessment as I see it, but more importantly, as people view it in those conversations that I have. And the key and the timeliness of this conference is even more apparent when I think about that, because the theme, information, disinformation, and communication, is absolutely essential that we're deliberating this in this venue at this time. It could not be more appropriate. And that's because the theme really goes to the heart of some of the challenges and opportunities that we are facing. Now, impact assessment has always been about information. But the problem is this: information is no longer constrained. Attention is, trust is, decisions are. That's where the scarcity is at this point in time, not information. And really, if we accept that, that changes an awful lot of things. The world is already reshaping the background and the environment in which we conduct impact assessments. For decades, the profession has been built on credibility of rigor, process, evidence, and these things still matter deeply. But there's also an uncomfortable truth here, is that rigor is no longer scarce. Data is no longer scarce. And increasingly, analysis itself is no longer scarce. AI can already produce incredibly credible assessments, structured, well-sourced, persuasive, increasingly difficult to distinguish from expert work. So the question for us is not theoretical at all. If anyone can generate these impact assessments, then why do ours matter more? Because if the answer is simply we produce better reports, then we already have a problem. The real risk from my perspective is not that AI replaces impact assessment. It's that the real risk is that impact assessment itself becomes commoditized. That we become very good and acknowledged for producing great reports, highly technical, beautifully produced. So we're respected as a profession, perhaps, but we're ignored. And that is not what this profession is all about. Impact assessment does not exist to produce reports. It exists to shape better decisions. That distinction is absolutely crucial. Because once we accept it, an awful lot of other things change. Success is not then defined by methodological rigor, compliance, or completion. It's all about influence. It's about relevance, trust, timing, judgment. In other words, the future value of impact assessment lies not in producing more information, but in helping society navigate complexity. And that's where AI can be both a threat, but also an enormous opportunity. There's no doubt that AI reduces barriers to entry. It will automate baseline production. It will accelerate baseline work, modeling, synthesis. Scenario analysis becomes so much more straightforward. But it will also massively increase the volume of assessment material that is out there. But it will also expose something fundamental. If impact assessment itself just defines itself as a process, we will lose to AI. We will lose to AI. But if impact assessment defines itself by judgment, synthesis, systems thinking, ethical reasoning, stakeholder understanding, and navigating trade-offs under uncertainty, then AI becomes a tool to help us in that quest. But it is still only a tool. Let's not forget that. Because societies don't make decisions just based on information alone. Societies base their decisions on trust, legitimacy, values, politics, economics, and communication. And that brings us back to the theme of this conference. Historically, communication and impact assessment has been seen as the end of the process, the final report, the technical findings, the consultation document. That mindset is obsolete. Communication is not the output of impact assessment. It is absolutely central and core to its effectiveness. Because if our insights are not understood or trusted, if they're not accessible or not heard by decision makers, then they don't influence outcomes. And if they don't influence outcomes, they do not matter. Now, that's a hard line, but I think it's one that we need to acknowledge. In a world of misinformation, disinformation, the question becomes not simply, is our analysis technically correct? The question is, can trusted insight still cut through? I believe it can. In fact, I believe impact assessment has never been more essential or valuable or necessary. Climate, biodiversity, energy transition, water, infrastructure, artificial intelligence itself, none of these are isolated technical issues. They're interconnected systems, challenges of systems thinking. And that precisely is where impact assessment should thrive and can thrive. But thriving will require adaptation, in my view. And I think there are three things that we need to be prepared to adapt towards. First, we must move from being producers of reports to shapers of decisions. Earlier engagement, more iterative engagement, and close integration into real decision-making behaviors. Secondly, we must move beyond narrow technical specialization towards stronger systems thinking and interdisciplinary thought. The future will reward those who connect complexity, not simply document fragments of it. And thirdly, we must become more confident communicators and trusted public voices. Not advocates, not activists, but trusted interpreters of complexity in a world struggling to navigate that complexity. And that's also where IAIA has a critical role. Not simply as a membership organization, but as a global platform for standards, capability building, collaboration, and for defining the future identity and relevance of impact assessment itself. Because if we do not shape the future, others will certainly shape it for us. So I close with the challenge. Impact assessment is not threatened because AI can generate more information. It is threatened if we define our value by the production of that information. The future of this profession will depend on whether we can demonstrate something far, far more important, and that is that trusted human judgment still matters in shaping better decisions. I certainly believe it does, and I believe this community has an extraordinary opportunity to prove that. Thank you very much, and enjoy the conference.
I am very pleased now to introduce Mr. Alain R, President of the Bureau d'Audience Publique sur l'Environnement, the BAPE, for introductory remarks. The BAPE is a unique institution in Canada created nearly 50 years ago and based here in Quebec City. It plays a central role in organizing public hearings on major projects, ensuring that decision-making is grounded in public participation, facts, and sound science. Mr. Roy has served as chair of the BAPE since 2023. He's a lawyer by training with graduate degrees in law and history. He brings extensive experience at the intersection of law, public administration, and ethics. He has taught at the Quebec Bar and the University of Sherbrooke and has held several key roles in public governance. Author of 2 books on municipal governance, he has built recognized expertise for more than 15 years in key positions within the municipal sector. The title of his presentation is BAPE, 50 Years of Participatory Democracy. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Alain R.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear partners, distinguished guests. First of all, I must apologize for my English. I don't used to follow my notes when I do my little speech, but unfortunately I have to do it so in the Shakespearean language. It is with a great pleasure that I welcome you to Quebec City, a city in rich history and yet firmly focused on the future. You are here at the heart of Quebec's capital, where major public decisions are made, and where is headquartered the BAPE, the Bureau d'Audience Publique sur l'Environnement, in English, Bureau of Public Hearings on Environment, which is an organization deeply rooted in Quebec's democratic culture. It is a tremendous privilege to host the 45th annual conference of the International Association for Impact Assessment. Seeing so many experts from all over the world gathered in one room, a big room, to discuss how to effectively communicate environmental impact assessments and the issues at stake is truly inspiring. The BAPE will soon be celebrating its 50th anniversary. Since 1978, we have been helping to inform government decision-making through public consultation and citizen participation. Over the decades, we have produced nearly 400 reports. We have orchestrated over 3,000 public consultation events here in Quebec and all the regions of the province, enabling countless individuals to voice their opinion on high-risk environmental projects in a neutral, impartial, considerate, and transparent participatory setting. But beyond the number, what defines the BAPE is the trust we have built with the public. This trust is precious because it is the foundation of our credibility, and it is even more valuable because it lies at the heart of the new responsibilities that the government of Quebec has recently granted to us. Starting next December 1st, we will be holding an information sessions from the very beginning of the environmental assessment process, which means as soon as the project proponent has filed its notice of intent. This will allow people to learn about a project and share their views much earlier. In this sense, the theme of this conference, disinformation, misinformation, communication, and impact assessment, is directly aligned with one of our goals, which is inform people. In a world where information travels at a lightning speed, sometimes unfiltered, sometimes lacking nuance, our role is more strategic than ever. For the BAPE, informing the public means much more than simply transmitting facts. It also means empowering citizens to participate, express themselves, and have a say in decisions. This is why the communications team plays a central role here at the BAPE. They work every day to inform public of their right to have a say, to explain our approach in simple terms, and to encourage broad public participation. We are convinced that the earlier citizens are informed about the project, the better equipped they are to distinguish facts from perceptions and to contribute constructively to the public debate. And as a result, the more feasible it becomes to counter misinformation. The new responsibility entrusted to us are precisely aimed at this goal. They will enable us to take proactive measures to initiate dialogue at an earlier stage and ultimately prevent misunderstandings and misinformation. Over the next days, you will have the opportunity to hear from several members of our team who will share their experience and their thought, and I hope enrich yours. Because ultimately, despite the diversity of our contexts and realities, we face the same challenge: how to maintain a public trust in an era of disinformation or information overload. And perhaps, above all, how we do ensure that the citizen participation remains a vibrant, relevant, and inspiring pillar of our processes. I really hope that we'll have fruitful exchanges, stimulating discussions, and promising new collaborations. And of course, I hope you'll have a wonderful stay in Quebec. Thank you and have a great conference, and vive le BAPE.
We are very honored to welcome Professors Rémi Quirion and Tim Caulfield as our keynote speakers. Dr. Quirion is concluding his term as Quebec's chief scientist after 15 years of leadership, and he is with us as one of his last engagements as such, so we are thanking him. He's a professor at McGill University. His career bridges science, public policy, and society. He is widely recognized for his contribution to research and public decision-making. He has published 5 books and more than 650 scientific papers and articles. He is president of the Fonds de Recherche du Québec since 2011 and was elected president of the International Network for Governmental Science Advice in 2021. Rémi Quirion has received many awards and recognition, including Officer of the Order of Canada, a Knight of the Ordre National du Québec, and a Knight of the Ordre de la Pléiade. He is a member of the Canadian Medical Hall of Fame, the Académie nationale de médecine de France, and the International Council of Science. So, Dr. Quirion, thank you very much to be with us today. Dr. Timothy Caulfield is a professor at the Faculty of Law and School of Public Health at the University of Alberta, and a leading voice on science, communication, and misinformation. His interdisciplinary research on topics like health and science policy, health misinformation, and public representations of science have allowed him to publish over 400 academic articles. He has won numerous academic science, communication, and writing awards, and he is member of the Order of Canada and a fellow of the Royal Society of Canada, the Canadian Academy of Health Sciences, and the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. He is also a best-selling author and frequent contributor to public debate. Dr. Caulfield has written, hosted, and produced documentaries which have been shown in many countries. So please join me in welcoming Rémi Quirion and Tim Caulfield. Together, they will engage in a conversation titled Science, Trust, and Impacts, Navigating Misinformation in Impact Assessment.
So a few words to start, and then Tim will introduce his topic as well. It was already mentioned, so I kind of have a 3-act as Quebec chief scientist for close to 15 years. I'm still not done. I still have a few more months probably. The longest serving chief scientist in the world. I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing. You'll tell me. But I serve under 5 different governments of 3 different colors and over 12 ministers. So keywords for me in terms of providing science advice associated with impact, of course, all those years, and the word was used a lot by the previous speaker, trust. Trust. Trust certainly is a keyword, and I will add to it resilience, because things change a lot, so you have to adapt very quickly to different scenes. Then as CEO of the Quebec Research Fund, we support the next generation of scientists through various types of fellowship awards, and that's very, very important. We support network, about 130 network on different topics, very multidisciplinary type of research program, and I'm sure we'll discuss that with you a bit more in the future, over the next few minutes. Citizen science. Citizen was mentioned. Participatory science, citizen science. We have a program called Engagement, engaging the public. And it's anyone in Quebec, they can submit proposal to us, and we'll associate them with scientists. Over the year, 2 topics where we receive a lot of proposal. One already discussed, environment, and the other one is in the health sector. We have also started chair in science diplomacy, because I think with the way the world is evolving, we need to make sure that diplomats are better equipped with science, knowledge about data, about impact that they may have there. We also produce a report on disinformation, misinformation. It's on our website. At the moment, it's only in French, but certainly we'll be pleased to provide summary if you are interested. Then INSA, the International Network Science Advice, that I have the pleasure to chair at the moment. It's a 10-year-old organization that was established first in the Global South. So we have chapters in Africa, Asia, Latin America, Europe, and a new chapter in North America. And here is building capacity in science advice globally. And this has a lot of relevance to impact. So very much focused on the Global South. We are present in over 130 different countries. And it's really building capacity in science advice at the global level, like UN type of model, WHO, at the national level, at the regional level, and more at the municipal level, because often that's where you can have more impact, especially in environment-related matters. So municipality, very, very key. So keywords for me at the end of my brief talk here: trust and resilience, 2 keywords. Grand Chief Picard mentioned dialogue, absolutely essential if we want to succeed. Dialogue with, of course, high-level policymaker, with government, but with citizens, with our fellow citizens, very important. Then I'm preaching for more science literacy for population as a whole, but certainly for the elected official as well. And finally, all of that together impacting on democracy and challenge to our democracy. Next, Tim, here you have a star, who I think is one of very, very well known in the field of ethics, in the field of misinformation, disinformation, fake news. Very, very exciting speaker, so I'm sure that he will be igniting flame in your heart, and then you'll have a lot of discussion and interaction about what he does, and he has published many books where you'll be able to find some of his thought over the past 20 years, maybe? 20, 25 years that you're in the business, more than that?
3 decades.
3 decades, good.
Thank you very much. It's a real honor to be here. Thank you, Rémi. And I could not agree more. I could not agree more with the introductory comments that I've heard today. Look, I have been at this for 3 decades, and I have never seen it as bad as it is right now. It is completely bonkers out there. And I really do believe, as you've heard many times, that the work that this room does has never been more important than it is right now. But my job, Rémi, right, is to set the table, right, to give you a sense of how bad it is out there, because it is absolutely grim. Now, I do most of my research in the health space. I do a little bit of environmental work, but let's just look at some of the data around health and how bad it's gotten, okay? So there was a study that came out very recently, the Canadian Medical Association, that found that 90% of Canadians now go online to get health information. It's really 100%, but 90% at least admit, they recognize they go online, right? 75%. If you guys remember one thing from my talk today, remember this number, 75%. 75% of the content that they see is shared without clicking through. Do you know what I mean by that? Right? There is an emotional response. An emotional response, it's about rage, it's about grievance, it's about fear. There's an emotional response to the meme, to the headline, and it's shared without clicking through. That's an incredibly important statistic. Okay, so what are people seeing, and what are they sharing? Well, it's gotten so bad in the health space that I think misinformation and disinformation and spin, it's almost the norm now. Studies have shown that about 60% of the content about fitness, misleading. Studies have consistently found about 80% of the content on platforms like TikTok about cancer, misleading, incredibly harmful. Our own research found that 50% of books about cancer available online, thanks Amazon, misleading. And on the first page, you guys, the first page of a search result, 70% of the content misleading. So it is incredibly grim. And we also know that this information is doing real harm. It's having an impact. Let me just give you a couple of statistics. And yes, I'm going to pick on the United States, but the bonkerness of the United States is relevant to the entire world, right? So this was a study that came out just weeks ago, and it found that only 39% of Americans think that the research, the science about vaccines is solid. Right? That is horrifying, horrifying. Here's another stat that I use often. It's by the Kaiser Foundation. They do really good work. They found that they ask Americans, do you think that the COVID vaccine is generally safe? Generally safe, which I think is a really modest question, right? Really modest question. And by the way, as this room knows well, I think you could make an argument that the COVID vaccine is the single most studied biomedical intervention in human history, right? Despite that reality, only 32% of Americans think that the COVID vaccine is generally safe, right? Which is really a remarkable stat. And by the way, the data in Canada, not great either. And then we also know that there are influencers, health influencers, that are having a greater impact on how people think about their health and what they think about health interventions than the experts. Can you believe that we live in a time when Joe Rogan, everyone knows Joe Rogan? Yeah, Joe Rogan has become one of the most powerful voices, not just in the United States, but in the world, right? Did you see the study that came out just days ago in JAMA, the Journal for the American Medical Association, that found that the interview between Joe Rogan and the completely unhinged Mel Gibson, the actor Mel Gibson, right, increased the prescriptions, not just the off-label purchasing, the prescriptions of ivermectin it doubled them, and especially for cancer patients, right? That's the world that we live in now. And then, as noted earlier, AI is transforming all of this, right? It's going to make everything I've already said even worse. We just published a study in BMJ Open where we looked at AI chatbot answers for health, right, on controversial topics, on topics that are kind of often associated with misinformation, and found about 50% of the time, you guys, the answer was problematic. And we know, studies consistently show that people rely on those answers, those chatbots, those AI answers, and it's just going to get worse, and people cannot tell the difference. And Rémi, if I may, there's one other topic I want to highlight that we haven't really touched on yet, and that is the role of politics. People often ask me, because I have been at this for a while, what's changed? And of course it's social media and it's AI. But almost more than anything, the degree to which political identity now informs how people see the world is astounding. It's astounding. In the United States, again, picking on them, but what's happening there, right, matters to the globe, right? In the United States, your political identity, right, who you identify with politically, is a stronger predictor of whether you're vaccinated than race, education, income, insurance coverage. You go down, that's incredible, right? It's incredible. It's gotten so bad, the role of political identity, that a very recent study, again, just days ago, published in Nature Human Behavior, found that now, whether you're conservative or liberal in the United States, is an astounding risk for health outcomes because of the embrace of misinformation, right? And the other reason this is important is we know, again, studies consistently show this. Once a health topic becomes about politics or a science topic, it becomes stickier. It becomes more difficult to change people's minds, right? The discourse becomes more toxic. And and that makes it more difficult for all of us, right? That's where we are right now, and we all do this, by the way. It's really remarkable the degree to which misinformation and disinformation now have created the distrust. Rémi, I'm gonna conclude with a really pessimistic recommendation. The platforms are not our friends, okay, you guys? Assume you're being manipulated. Thank you.
I think I'll stay here, and then we'll exchange, ask a few questions. So it's the opening session, and what you said is kind of depressing. Can we cheer the crowd? Is there hope somewhere?
There is hope. There is hope, and I really believe, I'm not sucking up to this audience, I really believe that the work that this audience does, as we just heard, has been never more important as it is now. So why am I saying that with such confidence? We heard all of the introductory speakers reference this, and I'm not sure if they're aware of this data. There's really interesting data about the power of the scientific consensus, telling people what the scientific consensus actually says. Over the past 5-6 years, the idea of the scientific consensus has kind of taken a beating. Am I right, Rémi? It's like the Star Chamber tells us the meta-narrative we're supposed to spread about, the conspiracy theory, when in reality, as this room knows maybe better than anyone in the world, scientific consensus that's messy, right? It's 1 or 2 or 3 or 100 studies that kind of point in a particular direction. It's constantly contested. It's constantly evolving. That's science, right? But the good news is, if you explain that to people, the nature of the scientific consensus, and what the degree to which there is a scientific consensus, you can change people's minds. Now, it's not a magic wand. It doesn't fix everything, but it nudges communities and individuals in the right direction. I'll just give one study example. This is a study from Europe where they asked the public, what do you think the experts think about the COVID vaccine? You follow what I mean by that? Like, what do you think the experts, so the PhDs, the public health experts, what do you think they think about the COVID vaccine? And 4 out of 5 people, you guys, 4 out of 5 people said, I think the experts are split. 50% think it's a bad idea, 50% think it's a good idea. Well, there's a whole bunch going on in that data, right? It talks about false balance, middle ground fallacy, etc. But the good news, Rémi, is when people explain the nature of the scientific consensus and the degree to which there is one, even skeptics change their mind. And they've done similar work with climate change, with GMOs, I think they done with fluoride, and of course vaccines and other contexts. This room, people in this room can play a really important role, and entities and organizations associated with this community can really make a difference. And I think we need to see that more in a way that's digestible for the public.
Yeah, and there I will agree with you. I mentioned very briefly one of the programs we have in Quebec, Engagement, engaging the public. And as a colleague from the BAPE was talking about, engaging citizens early on is absolutely critical. And one of the things that we have discussed with colleagues, with citizens here, is yes, you have these big reports that are very good, the GIEC type of report, the environment, hard to, but I want to know what's the impact of climate change for me, for my family, on my street in Quebec City. And there you engage, you build that, and then they become not necessarily advocate for science, but it changed the perspective. And then they start to be interested in other topics. It would start with climate, but then it could go to vaccine and health-related issues. But do you think, I mentioned scientific literacy. What about digital literacy in terms of understanding how algorithms work, how AI is constructed and all that?
So I think that your initial idea is so important too, because again, studies, more good news, right? More good news. Studies consistently show, and it's hard to study this well, and this room's full of people that care a lot about methods, and so we have to recognize it is hard to study this well. But studies consistently show that teaching critical thinking and media literacy really can make a difference, and it creates resilience too, right?
Yep.
So you look to jurisdictions like Finland, right, that start teaching critical thinking in kindergarten and throughout the education process. Other countries have done this too, and studies consistently show that does make a difference, right? And there have also been studies done, that are more clinical trial-ish that found the exact same thing. So there's good news that can really make a difference too. And holy cow, we need our governments to get those lessons also. But I think that there's two parts to this story, right? I think that we need to do a better job pushing back when governments are wrong. Now, that doesn't mean to do it in a confrontational way. Yeah. That doesn't necessarily mean to do it in a polarized way, but doing it in a way that sets the record straight. And again, there is some evidence that that's happening. We're seeing this organizations in the United States push back, in a way that we haven't seen in the past. Does everyone remember the Tylenol debacle from September? I don't need to explain it. The Tylenol debacle from Trump, right? I can't remember a time when organizations around the world spoke up quickly. They spoke up with pretty consistent voice about, and I thought they reflected the evidence really well. This is the correlational data they're using. This is the scientific plausibility. This is what the evidence actually says on this. Around the world, right? We need more of that kind of response consistently, right? Consistently in order to set the record straight. And again, it's not a magic wand, right? There is obviously going to be confirmation bias, et cetera, that is going to come to play. But we need to have organizations do that more and more to hold governments to account. And it seems to have worked a little bit in the United States, and I think we need to see it in other jurisdictions too.
Like the organization here, it's a global organization. What would you suggest, one or two things they could focus on in the face of disinformation, misinformation, all the challenge there?
So I do think we need a global response, and I'm going to be a little bit counter-centric here, if I might. I'm working with Senator Stan Kutcher, someone who I think you're probably very familiar with, and I think, Rémi, if I'm not mistaken, we reached out to you to participate, and you could not make it. We're trying to put together an organization of respected voices to help citizens, because I just don't think it, as was pointed out earlier, it's not just about aggregating the science and saying here's what it is. It's allowing citizens to navigate the evidence from trusted voices, right? And so Senator Stan Kutcher and I and others are trying to put together an organization of trusted voices, right? Now we're doing this in the health space, to be almost like a rapid response. So the Canadian Medical Association, the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons, associations from medical associations across the country, the Nursing Association, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we want to make this a respected voice that fills that void. And ultimately, what we'd like to see is that happen internationally, right? Internationally. And we have to engage communities, diverse communities across the world in a respectful way to co-create content that is relevant to each one of those communities.
So that's one of the follow-up question in the sense I mentioned the Global South. What's unique there about the Global South, the voice from Africa, from Latin America, from Asia, compared to the North American, European context?
So there are obviously unique challenges, and I'm not an expert on the Global South. What I do know is that engaging communities, as I said earlier, is absolutely essential, and having voices within those communities. So that's not just saying, here's the content we want you to spread. That's respectfully engaging those communities to make content that can respond in a way that's relevant to those communities. On the pessimistic side, and I touched on this really briefly in my opening rant, we know that what's happening in the United States and Canada is having a dramatic adverse impact on the Global South. On the globe, on the planet. There have been studies that have aggregated the survey research around the world, some very recent work that has shown that the doubt-mongering that's happening in not just the United States, but we'll say the OECD countries, is having an adverse impact on the planet, on the planet. And we were talking about this earlier. It doesn't take the generation of a lot of doubt. Like, you just need a little bit of doubt in order to have an adverse impact on human behavior, whether it's with respect to climate change, vaccine uptake, nutrition. It doesn't take a lot of doubt to have an adverse impact. We know that the rhetoric that's emanating from the West is unfortunately creating that doubt. So I don't think we should underestimate that. I think we need to respond quickly before generational damage is done.
So how to bring on board, and looking at the room here, how to bring on board the younger generation in the Global South, but also here.
Yeah, so this is another good news story, I think. Rémi, the world doesn't need people like us anymore. We need young, diverse voices that are creative, and the good news is we're seeing that happen. Like, over the past 3-4 years, there have been so many fantastic creative individuals that have platforms across all the social media platforms and are making a real difference. And it's hard to get good data on this, but I believe when you see a voice that is relevant to your community, that is speaking in a language that is relevant to you, it makes a difference. And the research on the other side, in other words, the bad news research, tells us that is so. So we know that when an anecdote, and we've actually done research on this, when an anecdote, a testimonial, a narrative is presented from someone from your community with your experience, it's more likely to have an impact. You're more likely to believe it. And we've looked at this in the context of the marketing of unproven therapies. Testimonials, anecdotes, stories, one of the strongest marketing strategies to push unproven therapies. Now, I'm not saying that we should use those necessarily to push science, but we do need to do a better job of using stories and voices in a respectful way from the communities where it matters the most.
And you mentioned that for the crowd here, impact, these type of testimonial, how do you assess the impact of that?
Yeah, it is very, very hard. So we're always asked to tell us, to assess the impact of even our work. And it is hard to tell whether a science communication initiative, we'll put it that way, really has an impact. I think if you look at the data in the aggregate, what strategies work, it's one of those areas where we need to take a multi-pronged approach. So there have been studies that have looked at, for example, the impact of debunking, correcting information. I don't love that term, debunking, but people know what I mean when I say that. Pre-bunking. So, warning people about the kind of misinformation they might likely see in the future on a given topic. Critical thinking, teaching critical thinking, and then using things like accuracy nudges. If you combine those things, and there have been studies that have shown this, you can make a difference, right? Are people more likely to believe misinformation? Are they more likely to share misinformation? And you can do that with fairly large data sets now because people are online. Unfortunately, as you probably know, a lot of the platforms are making it more difficult to study what they're doing, but you can do that. Let me give you one example of a super straightforward strategy that's often used, that has been recommended, and I think validated by, replicated by a number of laboratories. And this is the idea of just pausing for a moment. So this goes back to that 75% number I said earlier. 75% of content is shared without clicking through. So researchers like Gordon Pennycook at Cornell and David Rand at MIT have talked about if you just get people to pause, even for a moment, an accuracy nudge, less likely to spread misinformation, less likely to believe it. And I think that's because, Rémi, you're breaking that emotional response to the content and you're inviting, even if just for a moment, some reflection, right? And more likely. The other thing that people can do is step away from the noise. Just, for an afternoon, put your phone down. Be honest. Be honest. How many people in this room have their phone by their bed at night? Shame on you. What's my alarm? I need it. Put it away. Step away. Again, hard to study this well, Rémi, but the research, a lot of correlational data, et cetera, but the research tells us if you step away from the noise, even for a moment, really good for your mental health. And the effect sizes, again, I think we need more research on this, are pretty impressive. Your overall well-being, your anxiety, but also your critical thinking skills. So step away from the noise.
So maybe just a few minutes now, a few more minutes, but assessment framework that the group here knows very well. How would you suggest to address the challenge related to AI, generative AI, chatbot, all the media coverage of all of those? What should they do?
So, I mean, there are people in this room that could speak to this better than I can, but I do have some strong thoughts on it, uninformed thoughts about it. I think one of the greatest challenges, and we've been kind of nibbling around this, is the degree to which AI is going to pollute our knowledge base, right? Whether it's predatory journals, poorly done studies, et cetera, right? Fake journals that look real, and hallucinations that references that appear in content. I think a body like this can help people navigate that mess, right, in a thoughtful manner. The other thing that I think an entity like this can participate in is just recognizing the scope of the problem. I don't know if you guys heard about, this was a study that was talked about in Nature, again, just a couple weeks ago, where some researchers made up a fake disease. Did you guys hear about this? They made up a fake disease. I think it was a skin disease, right? And then they made up several fake studies and uploaded them to preprints, right? Got that? And then they asked AI chatbots, is this disease real? And they said yes, right? So imagine if you want to sell ivermectin or you want to sell some supplement. You can make a fake study, upload it to wherever, right? And you can make a fake press release. You can make on and on and on. You make a fake information ecosystem that will support your lies about the supplement. An entity like this, I think, can help, not just obviously in health, but in any topic, can help navigate the world through that storm.
Yep, and maybe you had that experience as well, but you could have a fake Tim and a fake Rémi as well. So sometimes it's not even you, but they use all kind of thing now. So it's very, very challenging. But maybe in closing, one or two remarks to close the discussion.
I have this incredibly pessimistic opener. Assume you're being manipulated. I think that's true. I think we should now increasingly, if you are online, especially if you're on one of the platforms, assume you're being manipulated, right? Assume you live in an information bubble. And now this is an incredibly informed audience, but reminding people of that can be liberating. It doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing. Liberating. The other thing very simple thing I often recommend to people is seek out information. Don't let it be pushed to you, right? Seek out information. And again, this is something this room can remind the universe to do, right? And I love the idea of pushing real policy change, right? And this is you guys are respected voices. I think we need to push policy change, and I think there is a growing fear about misinformation and AI. There was recent studies that show there's bipartisan support in both Canada and the United States for regulation in the area of AI, which is unique. Now is the time to strike, and you are the voices to make it happen.
Very, very good. And I will just say in closing, we need to work together. You're a global voice. We have INSA as well, so working together in terms of building more capacity in impact assessment, in science advice, in science diplomacy. I think we are all in it together, so we have to work more closely together. And thanks a lot to be here all week in Quebec City. Hopefully you will learn something about your business, but also you have time to visit the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Go Science!
Thank you, Timothy and Rémi. Dear colleagues, friends, and partners, as we bring this opening plenary to a close, I would like to sincerely thank everyone who shared their words, their knowledge, and their perspective with us this afternoon. from the cultural opening to the welcoming remarks and to the inspiring keynote we have just heard. Together, these voices have set a powerful tone for the days ahead. They remind us the impact assessment is not only a technical work, but it is a deeply human work. Over the coming days, we invite you to engage fully, to ask questions, to challenge ideas, to share experiences, and to learn from one another. This conference is a space for meaningful exchange across discipline, cultures, and generation, at a time when clarity, integrity, and respectful communication matters more than ever. We encourage you to take part not only in the sessions and the discussion, but also in the informal moments that make IAIA conferences such a unique and vibrant community. May this week be one of thoughtful reflection, constructive debate, and renewed commitment to the role of impact assessment in shaping better decisions for people, for communities, and for ecosystems. Thank you, and enjoy the conference.
You are among the leaders in the environment field. You are a new generation. So during this conference, this great gathering, you can rely on the state-of-the-art practices in environmental assessment and build on these historical achievements to innovate and continue to promote this important discipline. It is a wonderful opportunity. We can definitely learn from each other. Creativity and flexibility must be there. So considering the current setback, we know that nothing can be taken for granted and that the challenges are great. So it will take convincing arguments and leadership. It is a scientific discipline, but also a discipline of communication and consensus. I think it was quite clear this afternoon. So it is necessary to better influence the decision-making process, to face current environmental and social challenges, and achieve sustainable development. It is our common goal. So thank you very much for your presence, and enjoy the conference.